The Wire is one of the greatest shows ever created, being favorited by many, such as rapper Eminem and former US President Barack Obama.
I'm a huge fan of The Wire. I think it's one of the greatest, not just television shows, but pieces of art.
But without a doubt, the show has produced some of the darkest characters in television.
Get me! Where the f is Wallace?
Characters that selfishly betray the people close to them. I usually pick one character from a show that stands out amongst the rest, but in this show, the amount of characters with a dark psychology is endless.
My name is my name!
Stringer Bell, the second in command in the Barksdale organization, is an undeniably fascinating character. He portrays the image of a businessman while engaging in ruthless activities with the gang, such as ordering the murders of children,
Stand up like a motherfucking man!
lying to his closest friend,
What are the prison people saying? That he just hung himself like that?
and manipulating people to kill each other.
What'd he go by?
Brother Mozone.
At the center of everything, however, he primarily cared about money. His profits were more important than any reputation or needs of the gang.
I bleed red. You bleed green.
Despite his actions, Stringer believed he could leave the game through legitimate business, but life proved to be far more unforgiving. His past caught up to him, resulting in his ambush and death at the hands of the very men he tried to betray.
It seems like I can't say nothing to change your minds. Well, get on with it, motherfucker.
Your first impression of Stringer might be admiration of his intelligence and his desire to escape the streets through legit business, a sort of superiority compared to the other gang members. But as time goes on, the story reveals how many dark psychology tactics Stringer uses to get his way.
I won't want a word of this mess up in Avon's ear.
Baltimore niggas off the hook, I swear.
One clear tactic is Stringer's use of covert emotional manipulation. This is when you influence someone without them realizing, only to benefit yourself and using their emotional state to increase your chance of successfully manipulating, preying on their beliefs and values. There are multiple types of covert emotional manipulation, including love bombing, reinforcement, but the one Stringer Bell uses is reality denial. This is when you make someone believe they understood the situation incorrectly when you know they haven't. Stringer does this clearly after getting D'Angelo, the nephew of his right hand Avon, killed. After D'Angelo was sentenced to 20 years in prison, Stringer worried he would snitch and paid someone to get him killed in prison, but to frame it as a suicide. Stringer knew by making D'Angelo's murder look like a suicide, it prevents anyone getting suspicious and asking the question of who ordered the hit, as all accountability is on D'Angelo. And if any other suggestions were made that D'Angelo didn't take his own life, Stringer made sure to shoot those down too.
How the f gonna stop a man from doing some shit like that? It ain't on you. I would tell you if it was.
D'Angelo was strangled, which is planned.
He trying to drive a wedge up in here, man. You can't see it. He just figured a way to get out of there early. Ain't nothing nobody can do about that. I mean, how you protect a man from himself?
Nobody did nothing.
But the cops said...
He's lying. He paid to lie.
Another dark psychology tactic Stringer uses is deception. This is simply making someone believe something other than the truth. The real truth is either changed, hidden, or ignored in favor of a version of events that better suit the purpose of the person deceiving. Lying is the most common type of deception, which Stringer just doesn't do with Brianna and Avon, but also with Omar and brother Muzone.
Bird and them were there to see it, but another man did all the extras, all that cigarette shit, all that bullshit with the eyes. See, now this man, he building a rep for himself, and he wants you bad. The brutal shit, that's his calling card. Little bow tie wearing motherfucker from out of MIC. Yeah, small dude.
What'd he go by?
Brother Mozone.
He blatantly lies to Omar about brother's involvement in the torturing of Brandon, Omar's boyfriend, so that Omar could kill brother, but he also visits brother in hospital after he was shot and uses another method of deception, implication.
I just want to let you know that we got your back. You know, whoever did this, we'll find them. We got you, you understand?
Implication is essentially indirect lying. For example, if you were a retail banker, a job where the average salary is around 30k in the US, and you instead told people that you were an investment banker, a job where the average salary is well into the 6 figures, the intention isn't necessarily to fool people about the job itself, but more about appearing more wealthy than you actually are. Someone who hears you're an investment banker might fall for you more because they're attracted by your perceived wealth, and then you have more control over influencing them. You didn't explicitly say your salary or your net worth, you just said a job title. This is an implication. Stringer telling Brother Muzone whoever did this will get them, or asking who did it, is Stringer implying that it wasn't him who did it, even though it was. But he doesn't outright say it wasn't him, he just implies that he had nothing to do with it. Even whilst Avon is in prison, Stringer pretends to conform to Avon's demands about how to run the organization, but when actually running it, he does his own thing. And with Avon in prison, he never knew what Stringer was up to, setting up deals behind his back with Prop Joe that Avon was openly against. Stringer definitely uses other subtle tactics here and there, but overall his characterization can be summarized using the dark triad of personality, which consists of 3 personality types that combined create a person always capable of using the dark psychology to their advantage, and something I believe Stringer ticks all the boxes for. The first trait is Machiavellianism. This is characterized by a self-interested person who has an understanding on the importance of image, perception, and superficial appearance. They do whatever serves them whilst maintaining a positive self-image. A decision-making process goes something like this. How will this action benefit me, and how will my public perception be impacted? It actually benefits Stringer to have this trait, because as an ideal criminal, you want to commit the bad deeds in private, but then portray a different image to the public so that you can get away with it. That's why Stringer wears suits and moves to legit business, because he doesn't want to be dead or in prison like everyone around him, and that involves manipulating your public image despite what happens in private. Being the second in command, a high position, Stringer rarely has to take on any risk, as all the runners and soldiers take that on for him, whilst he profits more. He's not as Machiavellian as some other characters coming up, but he still displays evidence of it. The next trait is psychopathy, a term that gets thrown around loosely, and when mentioned, people picture a serial killer in a mask wielding a machete. But in the world of dark psychology, they are quite the opposite, often appearing charming, seductive, but internally having rarely any empathy or remorse. The former traits allow them to suck their victims in before fulfilling their dark desires. Stringer is one of the more charming characters in the show, originally making himself a likable character, always appearing relaxed and soft-spoken, whilst also evoking discipline. But we know he was a culprit of torturing and murdering Brandon, and never once displays any remorse for doing so, able to lie to Omar about it with not a single stutter. A psychopath's view on killing is how would this affect me and how will I use it to my advantage. There was a young member of the Barksdale organization named Wallace. Stringer suspected that Wallace was snitching to the police, so ordered for Wallace to be murdered.
What's up with that boy?
He just ain't built for this, you know? Heart pump Kool-Aid.
You ready to put the work in? You got heat? All right, soldier.
So when ordering the killings of Wallace and D'Angelo, he also had no remorse because it benefited him with them being dead. The third trait, and possibly the most prevalent, is narcissism. Many people get this confused. Narcissism shouldn't be confused with self-love. It's more to do with the excessively inflated self-worth, believing or acting as though you're superior to others when in reality it's not to the extent that you think it is. It's often supplemented with fantasies of money and power and the inability to accept criticism of your ideas. Now, Stringer in my view clearly displays behaviors that fit the bill. It's obvious that him attending the business classes at school make him believe that he's more superior to other gang members, because drug dealing is the same as business, right? Wrong. You see, Stringer's focus is more on profit short term, and yes, his business knowledge might help him with that, but what his classes don't teach him is the value of reputation. Stringer was willing to tarnish the organization name for quicker profits, and that made them appear weaker in the long run as their territory got taken over. Stringer's business knowledge was good for business, but that shouldn't have given him a false sense of confidence in the streets. This is why Avon told him,
I bleed red, you bleed green.
Stringer's actions were highly calculated and driven by his own agenda, as demonstrated by the analysis. Although he presented himself as a loyal member of the organization, his true motivations always lay in his own self-interest. Avon Barksdale, in contrast to Stringer, was a man completely dedicated to the game.
You know, I'm just a gangster, I suppose.
He was a leader who recognized that reputation was the most crucial factor for success in the streets in the long term. He derived pleasure from the fear that other gangs had of his organization, always making an example of anyone who crossed the gang, and was willing to be ruthless when the situation demanded it. Ultimately, his criminal activities caught up to him, and by the end of the show, Avon was sentenced to 5 years in prison.
Shit, you only do 2 days no-how. That's the day you go in and the day you come out.
As a leader of a criminal organization, it's impossible to expect a moral, law-abiding man. Avon utilizes dark psychology tactics to aid him in his journey. Most, if not all, of Avon's actions are driven by one word: reputation.
The word get out on the street that we weak like this, how the fuck we supposed to maintain our shit?
The Barksdale organization is named after Avon himself, and he shares his identity with the gang. If the gang appears weak, he appears weak. If the gang dominates the streets, he's the dominator. Therefore, it makes sense for Avon to also adopt Machiavellian traits. As previously mentioned, image and perception are of the utmost importance to individuals with this trait. I covered how they tend to ask themselves, how will this action benefit me, and how will my public perception be impacted? We see this in play when setting the bounty on stick-up man Omar. He initially put the bounty on Omar for robbing their stash of drugs.
You tell him it's 1,000 on the bucks, and it's a deuce on Omar.
But when he found out Omar was gay, he increased it.
You know, Bird jailed with Omar down the cut, right? He said he all
A f***.
F out of here. Said he had a whole stable of boys down in Jessup.
So he got a lot of heart for a sucker, huh?
Yo. We doubling down on Sweet Lips. We make it $4,000 on him. 6 if I get the chance to holler at him before he get got.
Why did he do this? Because of how it made the Barksdale organization appear. It's important to note that this show is set in the early 2000s, a time where homosexuality wasn't as accepted by the majority. With people during this time hearing that Avon was being robbed by a gay man, his reputation was at risk of serious damage, and he was willing to pay a lot of money to get Omar killed to show everyone he didn't tolerate it. I also suspect Avon of using dark persuasion, a form of persuasion where one convinces someone to act against their own self-interests. It's not the same as forcing someone to do something they don't want to do. It's providing reasoning and making them believe they're doing it for a good reason, when it really contributes to the persuader's interests more. Avon clearly does this with his nephew D'Angelo. D'Angelo's story is an emotional one, and his relationship with Avon during it was slightly distressing to watch. D'Angelo, being Avon's nephew, was forced to enter the street life, and while he wasn't too bad at it, he didn't want to be in the game at all. Every time something significant happened to him, like Avon getting William Gant murdered for testifying against D'Angelo, or the torturing and murdering of Brandon, he had the temptation to leave. However, Avon continued to persuade him to stay in the game for the sake of family. Avon's constant mention of family gave D'Angelo reasoning for being in the game. Avon, Weebay, Bird, and others were in the game because they loved it. The thrill, the hustle. They wanted to be in the game. D'Angelo was made to feel like he had to be in the game for family.
I don't understand, man. You grew up in this shit. My father, my uncles, my cousins. It's just what we do.
Avon successfully got D'Angelo to play his role and help the organization, up until their arrest. Even then, he made D'Angelo take most of the fall, getting sentenced to 20 years, whilst Avon only got sentenced to 7. It demonstrates how subtle the use of dark psychology can be, even using family as a pawn to reach your objectives. Avon's initial imprisonment provided the opportunity for Marlo Stanfield to emerge as a formidable player in the drug trade.
2 choices. Start taking out packages or you can step off.
With a fierce determination to dominate the Baltimore drug scene, Marlo waged war against the Barksdale organization, resulting in numerous casualties on both sides.
Whoa. They got patrol.
What's y'all know is a f***ing war going on, man? Get the f*** on the truck, man.
Nevertheless, Marlo seemed to gain the edge, having seized control of Barksdale's turf. He is a character with a twisted mind, where murder is merely a means to an end, and empathy is non-existent.
What's up?
Look what they did to my ride.
I'll do it or don't, but I got some place to be.
Let's begin by stating the obvious. Marlo fully embodies the Machiavellian personality type. It might sound like I'm repeating it over and over again, but when you're trying to be at the top of the drug game, image and reputation are the 2 most important things to think about. He will go around giving money to kids to increase his notoriety.
And
name gonna ring out, man.
This was a clear sign he was focused on reputation. He wants the street kids to talk about him in a godfather-like manner. Additionally, he desires to be both feared and loved, as love allows him to receive praise, while fear allows him to receive obedience. The combination of both allows him to gain loyalty. Being a generous giver allowed him to be loved, but his reputation for murder makes him feared.
Oh, f***s with me now.
Well, that don't mean there couldn't be some unforeseen
No one f***s with me now.
We see his soldiers like Chris and Snoop being extremely loyal to Marlo, proving he has found the right balance to make them respect him as their leader. I have covered how people with the Machiavellian personality type believe that status and public perception are the most important things to them.
We stepped the Junebug for talking that shit. He was a dead man when he opened his mouth. He just walking around not knowing it.
No matter if he said it or not, people think he said it. Can't let that shit go.
And this was also why he was so angry when he learned that Omar had been talking about him on the streets.
He used my name. In the street?
Now you make sure you tell old Marlo I burn the money. Cause it ain't about that paper.
You call me a punk?
Tell that boy he ain't mad enough to come down to the street with Omar.
My name was on the street? Word did not get back to me. Let him know Marlo stepped to any motherfucker, Omar, Barksdale, whoever. My name is my name.
His name is everything to him, and how others perceive him is of utmost importance. That's why he was happy to take the credit for Stringer Bell's death when Omar and Brother Mazone killed him. It boosted his reputation and increased the fear that he instills in others.
Stringer Bell? Who could have got to him? I mean, if it wasn't Joel on it. You know Avon's gonna put it on you, right?
Shit, let him tack it on my jacket. Don't make me no never mind.
I'm thinking it might be what you call one of them good problems.
Marlo also exhibits other traits from the Dark Triad, narcissism and psychopathy. His narcissism is evident from his obsession with power and being the top drug dealer in Baltimore. While he enjoys receiving love, he rarely reciprocates, as he is solely focused on himself. His psychopathic tendencies are obvious from his willingness to murder or order the murders of others without remorse. To him, if someone gets in the way of his goals, they are better off dead than alive.
Close your eyes. It won't hurt nothing. There now. Joe, relax. Breathe easy.
It's also clear that Marlo employs dark persuasion techniques to recruit Michael, a 14-year-old boy, into his crew. Although Marlo initially tried to entice Michael with cash, he refused.
You too good for my money? Boys, you such a bitch-ass punk, you worried about where my money come from. Ain't no thing, shorty. We cool.
Michael stood his ground when Marlo confronted him, which impressed Marlo and made him want Michael and his crew even more. Michael initially declined the offer.
We always in the market for a good soldier. You see one we like, we take care of the situation. Take him in, school him, make him family. And if you with us, you with us. Just like we be with you all the way.
Look, man, I already got a family. My mom's and my little brother.
Yeah, heard that. But think on it.
But Marlo expertly utilized what is known as the long con in dark psychology to gain Michael's trust before ultimately persuading him to join. It's implied that Michael was sexually abused by his stepfather when he was younger, and now he'd been released from prison, he feared the same fate happening to his younger brother. So with no other ideas, he turned to Marlo and Chris.
Got a problem I can't bring to no one else.
Chris murdered Michael's stepfather, and Marlo put Michael and his brother into a new apartment. Both actions gaining Michael's trust. In return, Michael became a soldier and a drug dealer in Marlo's crew, which over time made him more cold-hearted, which I'll cover later. It's evident that Marlo is a skilled persuader and a recruiter, as demonstrated by his success with Michael, and overall, he was a character full of pure evil. Preston Broadus, more commonly known as Bodie, was a dedicated soldier.
Standing on my real estate, mine now. Took it while you was resting.
As a member of the Barksdale organization, he understood his role and never attempted to exceed his capabilities. He was a passionate young man who channeled his energy into his work and stood up for his gang, but this also bred negative tendencies. He carried out any task assigned to him by his superiors, even if that meant killing one of his own friends.
Do it, goddammit, if you're gonna...
His loyalty and bravery throughout the show was commendable, but his pride ultimately led to his untimely death while defending his corner.
Yo, Bodie, you better run, yo. Yo, this is my corner, I ain't running nowhere. Bodie, is you crazy?
psychological lesson present in Bodie is identity. This concept can be applied positively or negatively, depending on how it's used. What sets Bodie apart is that he can create an identity centered around being a soldier for the Barksdale crew. He has discarded his former life as the regular Preston Broadus and has become solely a soldier. Bodie never engages in activities that are not related to the gang, such as attending school or working out, as he's chosen to embrace his role as a soldier with 100% commitment. Unlike D'Angelo, who is forced into the game due to his relation with Avon, Bodie identifies as a soldier and even recognizes himself as a pawn on a chessboard.
These are the pawns, and they like the soldiers.
This game is rigged, man. We like them little bitches on the chessboard.
Pawns.
He obediently fulfills his soldier duties and takes risks to do so because it aligns with his identity. For regular people, changing one's identity is challenging but possible. By identifying as a positive role, such as an athlete or an entrepreneur, individuals can tailor their lives to fit the associated lifestyle. For example, someone who identifies as an athlete will eat healthily, train extensively, and watch lots of tape to improve their performance. Similarly, someone who identifies as an entrepreneur will embrace hustle culture and productivity by working more hours, making more sacrifices, and strategically planning. Changing one's identity is not just a concept, it affects your brain's motivation by altering how you view yourself. Individuals with a poor self-identity tend to engage in short-term gratification activities like taking drugs, playing video games, but when they change their identity to match their aspirations, they find it easier to fulfill tasks related to their identity. Bodie's identity as a soldier empowers him to take on the more difficult and unpleasant tasks, such as murdering one of his best friends because Stringer ordered him to. This creates a cognitive dissonance in his mind, allowing him to view it as just doing his job rather than as a personal matter. Being a soldier, he knows that killing is part of the job. However, soldiers are also prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice for the team, as exemplified by Bodie's death while defending his corner. Michael Lee, a character with a story that is as emotional as it is dark. A kid who never wanted to be in the game, constantly showing resilience to get involved. But when you're 14 years old and have to be the sole carer for your younger brother whilst in poverty, the streets are the only option. We see more dimensions to Michael, such as him battling the trauma of being abused as a kid by his stepdad, never trusting older men, and once he got Marlo's crew to do him a favor and take care of his stepdad, he owed them and became a soldier.
I just want him gone. Just want him away from me and Buck. The f*** you do to you?
Alright. Take care of it, boss.
The more time Michael spent in the crew, the more heartless he became, and eventually he became unrecognizable, able to kill and show no remorse.
Look him in the eye now. No matter who he is or what he done, you look him right in the eye.
Michael is truly a unique character due to his numerous positive traits. He is a caring, nurturing, and morally upright individual who goes to great lengths to protect his loved ones. He stood up to bullies who were harassing his friend, he refused Marlo's money, and he made sure his brother was safe and well provided for. Despite his later transformation into a sociopath, it's important to acknowledge his earlier virtues. We previously discussed psychopaths as part of the Dark Triad. They are unable to feel any empathy or guilt, have poor impulse control, and will take immoral actions to satisfy their own needs without considering the victim. Sociopaths exhibit these same traits, but the key distinction is that they are shaped into this persona.
Youngins been saying your pup's the tall with a snitching boy. Michael. And that's what they saying.
Marlo refers to Michael as Chris's pup, to highlight that Michael is still in the learning phase, with Chris acting as his mentor. As a teenager, Michael has not yet fully developed his identity and is therefore more susceptible to being molded. At an age where he's most vulnerable, he is taught how to take lives and view it as strictly business.
Close, aim for the head. If not, think vest. That's why you said it.
Aight, boys learn.
It's interesting to note how different Michael is from the other individuals in terms of narcissism. His selflessness in caring for his close friend Dookie, putting his loved ones before him by looking out for Bug, and the fact that he rarely engages in actions that solely benefit himself demonstrate his compassion. Even his first kill was carried out on an order, and killing Snoop was a matter of survival as she planned to have him killed.
You downtown with the police?
I ain't say a word.
Yeah, that's what you say. But it's how you carry yourself. Always apart, always acting wild, when you should be doing what you told. You was never one of us. You never could be.
In both cases, he deviated from the morality of the situation. The primary issue is that Michael was born to be a natural leader, but because of his age and living situation, he was molded into a soldier. By the end of the show, his lifestyle to rob other dealers at gunpoint indicates he had been shaped too much to return to a normal life. Omar Little, despite being a notorious stick-up man who wields a weapon daily and is a killer, does not display as much dark psychology as people may think. He is a man who sticks to a moral code.
A man must have a code, oh, no doubt.
Never lying even when it could benefit him.
What exactly do you do for a living, Mr. Little?
I rip and run. I robs drug dealers.
And openly snitches on other gang members.
And you ain't afraid to go into court downtown and testify against one of Barksdale's people?
Omar don't scare.
Most of his killing and shooting is done out of revenge. After his boyfriend Brandon was tortured and murdered by the Barksdale organization, Omar went on a rampage. Later, Marlo's crew murdered Omar's advisor, Butchie, a blind defenseless old man, resulting in Omar going on a mission to kill Marlo.
You working a Stanfield corner, which means you working for a straight-up punk. I'm out here in these streets every day. Me and my Losa. Where he at? Huh?
Unfortunately, Omar met his fate early when a little kid shot him in a store.
Let me get one of them too.
His mind is still a very unique one to analyze. I strongly believe that many of his seemingly bad actions are done consciously to create a persona of fear. Omar's reputation is primarily built on fear, which works to his advantage, allowing him to rob people with mere words because they see him as ruthless. If you were an average citizen in the world of The Wire, then you would probably view Omar as a ruthless psychopath. However, what makes the show so great is that we can see every angle of his personality. We see his emotional breakdown after learning about Brandon's murder, the way Bunk made him feel guilty.
Now where that girl fell, I saw kids acting like Omar, calling you by name, glorifying your ass. Makes me sick, mother. How far we done fell.
And the fact that he has a moral code that he would never kill someone who wasn't involved in the drug game.
Look, I ain't never put my gun on no citizen.
Omar was born into a world where violence was prevalent, but he had a greater understanding than any of the other drug dealers. He doesn't believe that he's superior to anyone and treats everyone with respect, surpassing expectations at all times. He evades the accusation of narcissism and doesn't try to portray a perfect image that contradicts his reality, like someone with a Machiavellian personality would. He is openly gay, even if society opposes it, and doesn't care about snitching. He even testifies in court in front of the other gang members. Omar doesn't use people to boost his reputation unlike Marlo or Avon. He does it himself. This is why Omar's character is arguably the best in the show. He proves that it's possible to maintain a reputation by being yourself and not trying to build a fake persona to be liked. Omar's ability to do that stems from not caring about being liked. He simply does what he deems right. Chris Partlow was a fascinating character to watch, with a dark edge that made him stand out from the rest of the show's characters.
Chris, no! You know, I keep it quick, Dre.
As a loyal soldier and trusted advisor to Marlo, he had the highest on-screen kill count, dispatching his victims with ruthless efficiency and leaving their bodies in abandoned houses. He never showed any emotion as he carried out his work, even showing compassion to some of his victims before ending their lives in a quick and painless manner.
Chris, please. Don't fret, boss. I got you covered. Quick and clean, I promise.
However, there was one moment when Chris lost control, when he murdered Michael's stepfather. He seemed to be struggling with his own traumatic past and the abuse that he'd suffered himself. Despite being careful with the cleanup of his killings most of the time, Chris was eventually arrested for the 22 bodies found in the vacant houses and was sentenced to life in prison, but his reputation on the streets would never be forgotten. And I must say, his dark psychology is by far one of the most enjoyable to analyze. Allow me to delve into Chris's PTSD from two different perspectives. The Wire is a show that intentionally withholds a lot of context, leaving much to the viewer's interpretation. This means that even if certain things are not explicitly stated, they can be inferred. Chris wears military-style leather boots and often wears woodland camo, hinting that he may have served in the military before working for Marlo. This inference was reinforced when Michael joins the crew as Chris takes him through shooting practice with a tactical and practical layout, suggesting that they have used similar tactics in the military. Chris is also a proficient strategist when it comes to violence, covering his tracks and minimizing noise. You may be wondering about the correlation I'm trying to make. If your only experience is in the military, shooting and killing people, and you come back to a poverty-stricken Baltimore looking for work, it only makes sense to do something you specialize in. This would also explain why Chris is able to become desensitized to killing. If he witnessed countless killings whilst in the army, it's possible that he no longer has empathy for someone losing their life. It also makes sense that if Chris identifies killing as a skill in his job description as Marlo's main soldier, then he uses this justification of "it's just my job" and doesn't see the murders as brutal acts of evil. However, this is only based on the strong implication that Chris is a veteran. I wanted to prove this point, and thanks to a helpful Reddit user, I found that in the scene where Chris and Snoop get pulled over by a detective, there is a brief moment where we can see the Department of Defense sticker on the front of the car, linking Chris to the US Armed Forces. Still, it's worth noting that many organized crime gangs tend to use military tactics, and even someone like Omar has many army-like abilities to follow and kill, so I'll leave it up for interpretation in the comments. The second PTSD argument that Chris faces is, of course, the possibility of sexual abuse that he may have experienced as a child or in prison. Although this has little to do with his other crimes, it highlights the difference between emotionally killing and contract killing. Michael's stepfather may have triggered Chris's PTSD, and therefore he did not employ the standardized tactics we're accustomed to seeing from him, ultimately leading to his incarceration. Contrary to popular belief, Chris is not a psychopath, nor does he exhibit any of the other traits from the Dark Triad personality types. He does what he does out of loyalty and employment, rather than for personal gain. Some might say that he has no empathy, but his reaction to figuring out that Michael's stepfather was a child molester was actually a sign of empathy, as he understood how Michael was feeling. It's worth noting that it's only implied that Chris was also abused. He could just be someone who hates and was angry that Michael had to experience that, which would be called empathy. One of the most intriguing things about Chris is the desensitization I mentioned earlier. He could murder 5 people in one day, and the next day you could meet him at a bar or a cafe, have a regular conversation with him, even laugh with him, and see no signs that he is shaken or guilty.